Good day, everybody. This is the Ecclesiarch here, back with some more Warpforge. And today I'm going to be talking about the Ultramarines reinforcements while also giving them a tier on the tier list. You might have already seen my thoughts about their tiering in the Warpforge Discord, but if you want to know my reasoning as well as my thoughts about the whole thing, then please stick around. I also really do hope that EG is also watching this, because there is a certain card here that really needs fixing ASAP, because it's going to make the game really problematic if it sticks around. So, without further ado, let's begin. And please don't forget, this is just my subjective opinion. And as always, if you disagree, please write in the comments your own opinion. So, let us start from the Chaplain. And Chaplain, along with his ability, I would put in great. A lot of people have actually, in good, I mean, a lot of people have actually been saying that he's great, and it is quite possible. To be honest, I really do like this Warlord. I like how he has an alternative with his ability to either draw or either buff. I actually wish that most Warlords that just have targeted abilities could also have alternatives like this guy does. And always the strike with heal is really nice. So overall, I think this is a pretty good mid-range aggro warlord that really can that really will play on getting more and more troops and just going face. Maybe it will compete with Uriel aggro in that sense. So yeah, I don't think that he will outmuscle or outdo Marneus Kalgar, but I think that he's going to be a very interesting alternative to Varo Tigurius as well, if you really don't want to be drawing tactics and you want to be drawing troops instead. So a pretty cool warlord overall, and definitely a welcome reinforcement. Now let me just dive right into the hot take, which is this card right here, the rapid deployment, which I think is the biggest problem in this reinforcement batch. So of course it goes into extremely strong. This is the best card currently in this reinforcement batch, and it's 2 energy. Choose a card, choose a troop in your hand and lower its cost by 2. Now this is absolutely batshit broken, okay? Because if you play this on curve, meaning on turn 1, you could, for example, target the new Predator Annihilator, and then you play that Predator for 5. If you're going second, you also play that for 4. So the amount of tempo that this thing can give is absolutely nuts. Not only for vehicle. Now think about how terrifying this will be when somebody plays aggro with this. Can you imagine somebody playing this, then on 3 energy dropping a Vanguard Vet, and then dropping Lieutenant Calcius on 4 energy? I think that this is just not acceptable. I think that this is way too overpowered, especially considering you're giving this to a faction that already has a lot of energy cheat, like for example refill, like the defense card that reduces the cost by further by 1. So yeah, on paper it's like a very cool ability, but this is, I think, going to completely break the game, because a lot of people might think, oh yeah, but this is going to give more support to control. Not exactly. This is going to support aggro and tempo even more, making the already powerful Marneus Kalgar even more powerful when played on tempo. And then what's going to happen is the Dever Guild are going to have to nerf the Ultramarines again, and we're going to have a big mess. So I think instead of leaving this card as it is, there are 2 things that you could do. Either you increase its cost to 3. In that case, it's not as powerful anymore, because the Ultramarines realistically then have to waste a turn to get this to work, because the energy turn 3 is a big difference from turn 2. Or you could change this to only affect vehicles and not just lower the cost of the vehicle. What you could do is you could have 2 energy, your next vehicle costs 2 less. So this could be like basically the orc counterattack, right? Orc defense card. So you would play this, and then the next vehicle you would play would be 2 less, and you would not be able to like abuse this for late game, because if you're playing a vehicle deck, obviously you're going to be dropping more vehicles before your big guns come in, right? So I think the way that this should change, it should become either higher cost, but I think that would not be cool, because then nobody would probably play it. Instead, what you could do is make it a vehicle themed one. So give it the ability to reduce the cost of the next vehicle you deploy by 2. And not only this turn, like the next vehicle, indefinitely, just like the Orc one works. So that's what I think about this. Next, we have the Scout Bike. And Scout Bike is actually An interesting thing, I'm torn between putting this in all right or good. To be fair, I think I'll still put this in all right. So this is very interesting. So this is a 2 energy 1/2/3 and has the ability to deal 2 damage to whatever is deployed. So it also has camouflage. So it's like an anti-spawndom thingy. The problem with this mostly is that it has 1 melee attack. So what's going to happen with this guy is that mostly you're going to have this thing die way too soon, especially if you're playing against something like Zephyr Blade or Swarmlord or Shadow Sun. So yeah, it's going to be pretty difficult. It's going to be good against the pinging troops, for pinging warlords for sure, because of that camouflage. But the interesting part is, if this does manage to survive, then you could play a Tech Marine, which is one of the other new cards. It would heal it and give it armor, and then it could actually become a serious threat. So yeah, it's an alright card. I don't see it being like too powerful, but it's definitely an alright card. In some situations, it's going to be pretty good. I'm definitely putting the Oath of Moment in the great tier. So this is like gives health and also gives strike to trigger codex abilities. This could be a very cool late game card, and it's only 2 energy. A lot of people have been saying that, you know, this way you don't include more great Ultramarine cards, but like, come on guys, let's be realistic. Honestly speaking, it's always good to give a faction interesting options, because not everybody is going to be meta chasing, okay? So not everybody wants to be in the top 10, not even everybody wants to be top 1. So, you know, in terms of fun, it's always good to have something that is a good alternative. But maybe if you're building like the strongest deck, maybe you don't include that in there. But this definitely will give you some more interesting alternatives. Now, then you might say, but if it's not better than the current cards, then why is it in great? Because it can work really well if you use it as an alternative. If this was a clear inferior card to everything else, then yes, sure. And we have that example coming up in a moment. But currently, I think Oath of Moment can actually do some very interesting things. And another thing that is very good about it is that it's a unit one, not a troop, which means in the future, if we have a Codex Warlord, then it'll be absolutely crazy with Oath of Moment. Now, let's take a look at the next one, which is the Outrider. This goes into extremely strong. So this is a 3 energy 3/3 flank codex, gain +2 attack this turn. So a quick removal tool for the Ultramarines. Honestly speaking, I think this is here's a hot take. I think this is a good card, and I'll tell you why. Well, obviously it's very strong, but some people say that it's overpowered. I don't think that it is. You know, because Ultramarines, whenever the Ultramarines are meta, they're usually meta because they are playing on aggro, right? They're just playing on going face, dealing a lot of damage, and what happens subsequently usually is that the aggro gets nerfed in the following patches. And then the Ultramarines end up having some very difficult turns because they're missing that removal tool until they actually go into the Inspired Retribution. Sure, they have Reavers, sure, they have the Inceptors, but if somebody drops, let's say, a Carnifex at turn 3 because of the defense card, then Ultramarines usually get very stuck. So unless they have Inspired Retribution, while, for example, Necrons can answer with, let's say, the Scorpec Destroyer, right? So I think this kind of addition is definitely not bad. Plus, it's a vehicle, so there's some shenanigans that you can do there. So yeah, I think this is a welcome change. I, for one, really like it. I'm definitely putting Primaris Tech Marine into good. I just don't think it's great or amazing, because once again, as a 3-drop, it's not that good because it's a 3 energy 4/2/4. It's usually better to have a 3 energy 3/3/4, but nevertheless, it still has more HP than it has cost, which makes it already a good unit, and it has a pretty interesting codex. It gives armor and heal 3 to the vehicles. Now, the only problem that I have with the Tech Marine is that it's only healing vehicles, so unless you really have a vehicle on the board, he's kind of not doing anything. So sometimes this card will stay in your hand for the late game, and this will be more of a late game card than something you can drop on curve and be a menace like Galaron's Champion. So there are going to be some very interesting uses for this guy, but nevertheless, it's going to be a little tricky to get this to work, but overall a pretty nice card. Landspeeder is all right, I guess, and the same it goes for the Warsuit. I'll tell you what the reason for that is. Landspeeder is a little bit too slow. It can still grant you value if it is played together with Antaro Chronos. So if you're able to give this flank, then it'll draw you cards on strike, which is good. But the other problem with this is that on strike, as you guys know, you need to survive to trigger it. So usually you're not gonna have many options of using this. Actually, to be fair, I might even put this down to bad, because I just think that the stats are not there. It has the same problem as the Seraphim had for Sisters, that you essentially have the same unit with Tau with 1 energy cheaper, and it does have a nice strike ability, but let's be real, unless you combo it with Antaro Chronos, it's never really going to see play. I think for example, the way to make this stronger would perhaps be to give it a rally instead, maybe to draw a card. In that case, it would be a cycle card. So even though it would have inferior stats, it would still draw you a card, I guess. This way, I just don't think it's going to be used much. That's the main problem. The Warsuit is, what's it called again? Is it called Invictus Warsuit, or... I don't see I don't really see how it's written here, but anyway, you know what, let's just decide. Let's just talk about the card. The ability is when the enemy attacks, deal 2 damage to it. So this reminds me of the Iron Havoc squad from Iron Warriors in Horus Heresy Legions. The problem with this bad boy right here is the low melee attack and low health, because despite the very powerful ability, it can still be taken out by, let's say, something like a Scorpec Destroyer, or the most of like 4 or 5 energy flankers are going to be able to take this out. The good part is that even if this dies, I think it still is going to deal that 2 damage if it has the same code as an HHL. So actually this might go up from all right to good at some point. I'm just not sure if it will. I guess if you could give it armor, it could become a serious menace, and if the opponent doesn't have ways of removing it, it could still be pretty good. It is competing with good 5 drops, like for example the Judiciar, which is the stun, which is necessary for almost all decks, so it might have some problems because of that. But you know what, we'll see. I guess time will tell. I think it's all right, but it might go up later on. Yeah, these two are both very bad cards, and I'll tell you why. The Armored Offensive is not good because we have the same card currently in HHL for Custodes, and it has 2 reduction instead of 1 reduction, so it does exactly the same thing. It gives you Custodes vehicles, but reduces the cost by 2 instead of 1, and that is not being played. Now, if that is not being played, for sure as hell this will not be played, right? So these kinds of cards are just something that EG usually likes to include, and you know, it's an interesting concept and an idea, but I don't think it's going to be played much because it is just way too slow and is too RNG dependent. You have to like dodge an entire turn, you're doing nothing to just get 3 vehicles, and you don't know what you're getting. You might get like amazing vehicles and you might get bad vehicles, and now that Ultramarines have more vehicles, the chances of getting a bad vehicle are actually higher. Like if this was a card before this, it would actually be better because most vehicles that you would get would be good, but now I just think it's a little it's just not that good. The problem with the Speeder Hellstrike, I believe is how it's called, the problem with this is that it's just competing with way better cards. Like at 6 energy, Ultramarines have 3 very good cards. They have Lieutenant Calcius, they have the Inceptor Sergeant, and they have the Blade Guard Veteran. So there's literally no reason why you would ever play this over those cards unless there's a crazy Scarab meta going on, which usually is not the case. So I just think that the reason why this guy won't see play is because the competition is just too thick. So you really can't find a place to put this in your deck considering there are such better options available. And finally, we have the Predator Annihilator, which is also going to go into extremely strong. I think this is an amazing card. So the ability is Codex, deal 4 damage to the enemy with the highest attack. The only problem what I have with this is that it's going to make the helicopter basically obsolete. Some people are saying that maybe not because that one is flying, but I don't think it really matters because this is a 7 energy 7/7 with armor 1. Stats are already good and it deals more damage It's more consistent because you always know what it's going to hit, because it's the enemy with the highest attack. And the worst part there is that you can just play this on curve to hit the enemy face. It's a free death from above. So you're not, if the enemy board is clear, you're playing 11 energies worth of value. You're dropping a 7 energy troop while also playing death from above on the enemy's face. So yeah, the only problem I have with this is that the copter is kind of overpowered, I guess. Not overpowered, like obsolete because of this. Perhaps it would be a good change to make sure that the Predator Annihilator actually targets only troops, and the copter actually can go face again instead. So that way you would have the advantage of the copter that it's flying and can go face, while the Predator Annihilator has the advantage of more damage and also always knowing what you're going to hit first, right? So yeah, overall, those are my thoughts, guys. I think that some of the necessary changes would be, first of all, to change the rapid deployment. I think the one that I'm suggesting is good. Just your next vehicle costs too less. And with Predator Annihilator, it's amazing, but I think it would be better if this could not go face and the copter could go face instead, so that we could play both of the units reliably. Everything else is, I think, all right. These are just not really that good. Perhaps they could see some changes in the future. But yeah, overall, a pretty strong reinforcement drop for the Marines for an already strong faction. So please leave a comment and tell me what you think. Ecclesiarch out.